Today, I'm excited to delve into a topic that is both close to my heart and crucial for the long term health of any creative endeavor: talent development within the game art team. In the ever evolving landscape of game development, developing talent isn't just an HR objective, it's an artistic essential. So, how do art directors nurture individual artists? How do they create an environment that not only produces beautiful art, but also fosters beautiful careers? To help us navigate this subject, I'm thrilled to have Misha Strombach with us today. He's an esteemed art director who has worked as entry-level artist, an art director for studio, and everything in between. Together, we'll discuss the challenges and strategies involved in developing artist skills, from understanding their career goals to offering them opportunities for real growth. Whether you are an artist looking to chart your career path or an art director wanting to level up your team, this episode promises to offer a roadmap. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome. And I'll start with introducing our guest for today, Misha Strombach. Misha has been professionally working in the gaming industry for 13 years. He started with working for startups to AAA game studios, and he has done practically everything in between. Misha is specialized on working on the game engines from 2009. And this is something that I really admire and appreciate because I haven't met a lot of art directors who are so hands-on on the game engines. So this is something that I really like from what he knows. Misha started his career as a 3D artist and went on to being a character artist, a lead artist, and then now art director for studio. And currently he is working at Rovio. It's about 4 years for him working in the Stockholm studio in Rovio. Misha has previously worked for many IPs, from Angry Birds to Payday and Formula One as games. And Misha is currently managing more than 20 people. How's it going, Misha?
Yeah, going good, man. Nice to be here. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, nice to have you here. I remember you came down to India last year for the IGDC and you gave an amazing talk. There was so much from your journey to learn about how your career grew from starting, getting your first break to basically what you're doing right now. And I'm sure that at this role and the position that you have in the company, you are involved with a lot of talent development, which is what our topic for today is. Could you maybe briefly tell me more about like what your personal growth journey has been? And was there any kind of pivotal moment in your career that changed your approach on talent development?
It's a great question. I will start out by saying, first of all, when I started understanding that, well, first of all, like you can work with games because I'm from Sweden and I didn't really think, I knew we had DICE and, bigger studios, but it never struck my mind that you could work with it. But when I came into the industry in with a lot of, as you mentioned, I talked about it at the IGDC. I was really getting into like with the mindset of I want to create the best that I can to my ability, but not only maybe just limited to the art, but also like what do I actually know about games from the games that I've played, since basically toddler stage and then, going upwards. My kind of never be scared of saying anything that you actually think, even though if I had my first year in the industry, I was still talking with everyone in the studio, all the designers, all the programmers, just trying to get more knowledge from them, but also sharing a different point of view. And of course, the more experience you get with more different types of studios you're in, you see different types of way of working, and all companies are running in very different ways. So I guess that just going to a new company with the understanding that you have and expanding more the knowledge to the people that you meet, like what do I like, what don't I like with the way that things are run, how efficient you are as a team, how much passion is actually being put into the project and so on. So I guess that with every new job comes a new bag of learnings that you get over time. And of course, that always changes the way that you think, how you make the most efficient choices when it comes to both teams, but also towards the game, how to be efficient in making in the different stages of game development, from all the way from prototypes to, live games, churning out content and so on. So I think that by changing and just experiencing new areas gave me that knowledge over time. I would say so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But did you always knew that this is how your own development works, or while working in the industry, you realized this concept of, there's something called talent development, and it's a practice which is like either as an initiative or self-driven, or it's coming from your line managers? Like, was there something that helped you understand the whole concept and the value of it?
When I experience myself in certain companies, especially when you work under tight deadlines and try tight restrictions, it's like you have to deliver all of this within 1 year. For example, you have to make this whole game. You start to really think about the things that also are not important. And of course, this is something that you get from different types of input from different managers that you have. But I've always kind of tried to follow my own gut as much as possible, but also at the same time be very open to being wrong at the same time, because you can come in with a lot of assumptions, or now I made 4 games, so I'm getting pretty good at making these mobile games. So, but then of course you learn by someone else that has experience, and I think that it's something that's always come from myself, to always be as efficient as possible, but also being a good team member, having fun with the people that you work with. And yeah, I mean, in the end, I would say it comes down to my own personal taste in efficiency, and always keeping quality in mind also at the same time.
One of the thing that I can recall from my career, where there was a huge progress that continued to happen as I continued to work, was when my line manager, like whoever was my craft lead, my person who was, when they were extending more support and they were showing the trust and hope in me. I think this is the moment where it allowed me to realize that, I can work harder. I'm getting more motivation at work, and I also need to level up, that kind of like feelings. So I think that played a big role for me.
Totally. I mean, yeah, when you mentioned that, I guess when I was promoted to a lead artist for the first time, I went from being a character artist to a lead artist. And that was because what I mentioned, we were working on a pitch for a bigger game studio. I think it was Nickelodeon, and I was working at Exient at the time. And we had 1 week to create basically a few renders of an in-game where you have UI. So basically a visual target, right? So you could say that something that you would develop for marketability testing today. So I was sitting in the room on the Monday. We had to deliver it by the Friday. And there was a lot of people with a lot of different experience at the time. And a lot of them were like, oh, I can do this, or I can do that. And like, oh, this is fun. But almost forgetting about what's the important thing here. The important thing is one screenshot that looks great and has this IP that we're working towards. And yeah, it has to look awesome. So basically at the time, after a while, I was like, okay, it sounds really fun and all, but okay, so you do this, you do that, you do this. I will put it all together. I will create the character for it. And then we just go. It's like, no more talking, no more, like try to make it as clear as possible to everyone that was in the meeting. And so I had a super nice art director at the time, learned a lot from him, but he really wanted to give everyone a place to talk and say what they could contribute with. But at the time, I just felt the time pressure. So I was like, okay, we need to go now. We basically just have to do it. And after 1 week, it was a very successful screenshot. People really liked it. It was great for the pitch. It was inside of a pitch document. And we were all very happy with it. So that's like one week later, my art director asked me, by the way, do you want to become a lead artist? And I was like, yeah, sure. Why not? So then I also got some kind of, oh, this was appreciated, like being kind of direct, but also at the same time, of course, being nice, but also basically steering people up towards the same type of goal and making that goal very clear for everyone. And by doing that, I gained, confidence. But then, as you said, also, there's so much more that you feel like, oh, I need to start working on this now. I need to really, I want to be a good leader. So, and I'm completely new in it. So, of course, then also when another box opens up of all the questions that you have, that you start asking people to gain knowledge, especially from people that you respect and that you get inspiration from.
Mm-hmm. And like I'm stepping out a bit from self-assessment and self-motivation, but now thinking more from a leader perspective, where you're given a team, what kind of like hurdles and obstacles and challenges which the art directors face when they have to deal with trying to develop their team? I am going to give some examples. Like, for example, maybe your team is working on a project which doesn't have any opportunity for growth. Like, it's a live game, things are established, people are familiar with what they need to do. There's not much of challenge in there. And sometimes there are also moments, like I hope you agree that there are moments where artists may lack their own motivation to put some sort of effort from their side. So how do you, in these kind of situations, overcome and create a situation where it's more, where people are trying to grow?
First of all, I think you need to be very personal and very open with each individual, and every individual is different. Everyone has different motivations. Everyone, some of them wants to really get good at their craft, what they're doing. They want to keep building on top of that. So, one kind of manager towards employee plan fits all. It doesn't exist. Not an efficient one, at least. So I would say basically getting thrown right into it. Let's say you get thrown into a live game and you have 10 people there. You have 10 artists that you have to manage. First of all, you need to check what is the temperature overall in the group. Like where are everyone at? Who's bored? Who likes what they're doing? What's still unclear with the process? What in the whole process are they not happy with? What in the whole process are they happy with? And what would they personally like to see more of? So that's when you can start, okay, so what if we can do something, you wanted to learn more about this, but you're stuck in doing all of these, tedious tasks that you've always been tasked to doing, is that, first of all, look at the overall project plan. Is this reasonable for one person to be having all of these kind of mundane, boring tasks? Or do we need more people? That's also when you can start like adding more people to kind of maybe even train them up, or you hire a senior to just come in and do that as well. But then you could also unlock some of their time to add into like, okay, so what do you want to learn, right? Oh, I want to do more character design. First of all, do we need characters for this game, right? Or secondly, it can be about, but what if, you take a few hours every week where you just take some time from your schedule, like let's say Friday morning. That's usually where I go with Friday morning between 9 and 12, where you just sit and work on exactly what you want to work on, because that gives them a lot of motivation. Also, like, oh, now it's Friday. Now I get to work 3 hours on, on becoming better at character design, or maybe even someone to get better at doing VFX in the game, or have been curious about it. So it's just like, well, here's your chance to, start doing some of that. And that's basically just having an open communication with them, being transparent, but also like sharing your own personal views. Because if you open up as a person and as a director or as a manager about what you see, what you feel, what you've been, here's what the team thinks, here's what you think, here's what's important for the team, here's what's important that we deliver, but here's what's important for you, and how do we together make you happy, basically, or happier.
Mm. Yeah. One very important thing which you just said was about how to increase the workforce on a specific work, because I face this a lot. There can be a really specialized person who can do, let's say, backgrounds very well, but then there's no one in the team who can do backgrounds. And what happens is that person ends up just doing background 365 days. And it doesn't really leave enough of opportunity for them to try out new things, do something differently, develop basically. And this is where it gets really hard, where like you can't even measure their development and growth because they are already very equipped and capable of doing that set of work. So you're not helping them reach to the next step. And in addition, sometimes there are also problems where maybe your organization doesn't provide you the tools, or they don't let you have things like what you said, like, for example, dedicating 3 hours on a Friday just for your own development. And these kind of situations also create a lot of like challenge internally for you as a lead, where you're focused on talent development, but not sure how to approach it. One of the things which I do here in these kind of cases is I sometimes try to build my own culture within the team. And I think this is possible still. You don't have to entirely go by the, like, whatever everyone is doing, but basically you can have your own tools and your own set of working and your own team and the way you work with them. And this is where you can kind of like create different kind of opportunities and room for people where they can grow and develop and help each other. It's all the kind of the culture that you end up creating for them.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's also about showing the appreciation for them, right? Like because appreciation and acknowledgement is also something that brings a lot of motivation at the same time. Like you're great at this, and if you have someone, for example, drawing backgrounds, 24/7 every time they're at work, I would still question, like, okay, this is not sustainable in the long run. First of all, this person we're basically milking the creativity of this person to just use in backgrounds. There has to be a more efficient way. So like, what other solutions can we make? If we cannot hire anyone, an additional one, or take in an intern, or, or train someone up, if you don't have the headcount, you need to start thinking about, okay, first of all, is this sustainable in the long run? So how can you, obviously it's not, but a lot of appreciation and a lot of encouragement, and also, saying that you own kind of this area also. I'm here to support you, but, you don't have to check with me all the time. So maybe also looking at the process. Well, how many times do you get feedback on one of these? Do you get like 10 rounds of feedback? Maybe can we remove it, take it down to 2, So it's all about finding a solution which makes it more fun to do these things. But also at the same time, leave room because if you have an unmotivated person creating something, they probably take 2 or 3 times as long as someone that is just, in the zone doing it. So that's also how you can find efficiency in a different way. And usually you can do that by just talking to people and kind of trying to give them what they want, because then they will give back to you as well.
And sometimes some organization encourage for a disciplined plan about development for people, where they talk about processes and they define that, you should have one-to-ones with your artist, and I don't know, like maybe it can be a quarterly check-ins and wherever, and also goal setting and measuring them. But I've seen that sometimes there are some artists who are very unclear about their goals. Like they don't basically know what they want to become. And also, I hope you agree that artists also have this kind of trait, where they focus more on the journey more than the destination. It's like something that they're just doing as a wild artist, they're continuing on. They don't really have specific ambitions that they want to become this or this. Maybe in your case, you might have it. I had it for myself. But I've met a lot of people who are just experiencing the journey over here. In those cases, how do you create a personalized plan for them, especially like making very important decisions like you should specialize, or you should basically focus on diversification, or even taking a route of being a principal artist versus a leadership route? So how do you put your thoughts on them?
Great question, because I think it's as I mentioned earlier, also, it's very, very individual. And you do have some people that come into game development and they maybe have something in mind. Like I had something in mind. I wanted to be one of the greatest character artists in the world. That was my target. So I was continuously working towards that. But that has changed, of course, since then, since getting more knowledge, experience, understanding what's actually important. I was also very focused on end goals and so on. But as times change, your goals will also continue to change. So you could just also take this experience that I said, and I told it to one of the artists that I'm managing, is that it's okay to not know. Like you like being a generalist. You're a person that if it's stressful, you like it. Like so just trying to identify what this person enjoys. If it's too quiet, this person kind of goes under the radar and kind of sinks in motivation. So this person kind of always needs something new to do. So you could always find a good spot for them in a team where they are used as like, oh, you want to do some, let's say the base of them is a 3D artist, right? So, okay, you're going to create these type of props, and then you're going to create, this maybe for the UI, but then we need a mock-up VFX that we can use, so you can always find the efficiency for them in a variety of work. It's a little bit harder to manage on a day-to-day basis, but it's still like, if that's what keeps them ticking, then, and doing good work, it's beneficial to everyone in the end, right? Especially for themselves. And sometimes it's okay when I sit and talk with people. So the most people have asked the question, so how do I go from where I am today to being a senior? Or how do I go from being where I am to being a good lead? Or, and that's a different conversation for everyone. But I've also said, it's okay to just enjoy the ride where you are right now. If you feel motivated by what you're doing, just keep doing it. And eventually you will start to create new goals. And just now, let's just continue, focusing on being a generalist instead, rather than, like just going pure down the 3D track. If you find more motivation of trying some tech art, so it's a combination of variety. It's a combination of making them feel appreciated, kind of whatever they choose on doing, because in the end, being a good manager towards them, and what makes them think that you're a good manager, is that you're supporting them, right? But also at the same time, you have the company goals in mind, because we need stuff to get done. So it is a balance, but there's the more kind of loose and open you are with that at the same time. So it doesn't have to be, hey, I want you to write a career plan for yourself. I want you to, to grow in this area to become a senior one day here, so we can use, no, it's more like, what do you want? And how do I help you? And how do you help the company by doing what you want to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why I think this kind of like the personal connection between yourself and that person in very regular one-to-ones or interactions for them, even sometimes managers maintaining honesty and truth about the industry and telling them, because this is something that they need to know if they are not completely aware of the whole landscape from a top-down view. They don't know the goods and the bads of every role. So I generally go very honest with people about telling them about what are the challenges. Sometimes maybe it can demotivate them, but they need to know that when you're also working as an art director, there are certain compromises you make about your time management. There are some stuff that you have to do which might not be all connected with the art, but they need to know this in order to understand about, if I'm thinking of going to become an art director, I have to accept that this is going to change for my day-to-day overall.
Absolutely. And in the end, a lot of it that, with positivity, it comes from a good attitude. It comes from, like, I want to do my best. And in my experience, when I did my best, maybe in this role that I had, I found, you just share personal moments. You share, because when you have, like 10, 15 years in the industry, you have loads of memories. So why not share them in a way that hopefully other people can learn, and also give them, encourage people to kind of go get what you want.
Mm,
it's right there in front of you. You don't have to sit and listen to you know there's you have all different types of personalities in a team, right? So a senior that, or I'm talking to a junior that is just completely listening to a senior. And what I say to the juniors, for example, is that if what this person say doesn't really resonate with what you think, come to me and we'll have a conversation about it, and I can add my input and try to see both angles here. And then you have to also form your own view, your own opinion, your own experience, your own journey, to also, the more you stick by your own values as you are as a person, the more clear it will become what you want to do eventually and what you're good at.
mm. And you already spoke a bit about your approach on how you work with people and how that directly or indirectly contributes to talent development. But I'm coming as a basic definition for what a successful art director. Obviously, there are many things that a person has to do, but their role for some people will just mean you have to lead a team, you have to get the benchmark set, you have to deliver quality with them, get stuff done in time, manage people, all of that stuff. So this is basically like overall as one line of what we have to do as work. But while you are doing all of these things, what are the smaller here and there initiatives that you take in order to directly or indirectly contribute to talent development? I'm going to give my example. Like, for example, the things that I basically try to do, and I think this is also applies to the actual working, but having some team demos once in a while, whenever like someone did something and they did really good, I encourage that person showcases it to the rest of the team and show their processes. So you don't just see the end result, but you basically also learn from how this was done. Also, internal placement is something which is very helpful, I think. Not just always recruiting from outside, but also promoting and supporting people, maybe giving them an uncrowned hat for the moment that you are working as a lead. You're not a lead yet, but you have to work thinking like a lead, and then you will probably be recognized in the organization. So there are these kind of like smaller and bigger things that we do, which may look normal, but are there any specific example from your side which you incorporate apart from your regular responsibilities?
Absolutely. I think you mentioned a few good things that I usually do also. So I give every month I have a studio art sync. So I take all the studio artists, I give them updates if there's anything that needs to be said to everyone. So either if it's any structural changes, or is anyone going to rotate the team, and so on. So just a little bit of news, and then I have the project art leads in the projects that we have speak a bit about where are we right now with the game, what are the team currently working on, so everyone feels like in the loop, that they're updated continuously, at least once a month. And then also I have a show and tell, or show and shine, call it, and I ask everyone to send in their work that they were doing, work in progress pictures, especially like a series of pictures, like how did you start this and how did you end up with this? What's the final result? So it's not always about the final result that you mentioned. And then I give everyone the space to talk about themselves, also talking in a group with people, because not everyone are comfortable, or even, they get nervous, even just talking into the people that they know, even if it's 10 people or 15 people or 20 people. So giving them the space and encouraging them, and like appreciating them for sharing their art, and talking about it, that's something that is very appreciated in my team. So that's one thing. So a nice open show and tell where everyone speaks, basically. Secondly, I also run workshops every now and then with members from the team. So if you usually you are really, really good at something, right? So as an example, I run different types of workshops where I ask, for example, an animator, like a senior animator, can you just show your workflow? Like how do you create all of these awesome animations? Can you have a workshop where you start with a presenting part, where you just go through the pipe, and then you can actually sit and do a live demo of you doing something, creating something, so people also can understand the process a bit more. What's the effort that goes into like sitting in Maya and rigging and skinning and creating controls to be able to create all of these animations. So, deep diving into different territories, because people do think that's really interesting. Or I've had several 2D artists just like having their own workshop about what they're passionate in. So one was doing, how do you find inspiration for a prop that's designed for a specific universe that we're working in? Like, where do you find the inspiration? How do you put them together? And how do you start drawing it? And then people just sit and draw live, people can ask questions. And what do you think about this? Stylization of that, readability of this. Another one was doing environmental backdrops. And in some case, he was super passionate about that. I have a character designer that is now having a 4-series workshop where it's 1.5 hours times 4, where it talks about all the different principles in character design and really diving deep into those areas. And so it's all about teaching everyone and at the same time, having fun in the middle of the week, also just like relaxing to a workshop and expanding your knowledge. Because even though those 2 first sessions that has been now in this character design workshop, people are already engaging in terms of, here are some things that you can do in your spare time. And then we take a look at them together, and the professional character designer can sit and really give detailed feedback on things that already look great, kind of. And as a last example, I did myself just an After Effects course at work where I used UI and how do I animate UI, for example, in a mock-up or for a prototype. And yeah, the last thing is, as you mentioned, also with when you have people in a project, right? Because as an art director, like I myself in this role at Rovio, I have several projects, and I don't have time to necessarily do what I personally want to do. If I would think about from my creative hat, okay, I want to create a character, let's say, because I have a passion in doing characters. Well, that's probably not the smartest thing to do. So, okay, and I cannot be a lead on the project all the time either, to be there every day in their stand-ups, in their discussions with other leads, other disciplines. So it's also that you have to find the person that would be the best in your team currently to be the project art lead, as we call it. And that does not necessarily entail that, it changes your role, it changes your role description. No, you're just basically helping me out by communicating with me and the team, and here's how you would do it. And most people that I've worked with that are also trying to go maybe from senior to a lead position within their craft to also take responsibility over being a supervisor over someone. You have to train them step by step of the way, especially in terms of their communication. Communication is everything when you want to be a good lead, and also someone that the team knows that they can rely on. So you cannot just assign a person to be like, hey, now you're the project art lead. Good luck. We'll have a meeting once a week, and you will update me on how it's going, and I will give you input.
Totally.
So yeah, it's a dynamic kind of like what do they think? Who works the best with other people also, and so on. So
yeah. Those are great initiatives, and I agree. Like internal workshops are heavily influential and helpful, and also inspiring for people to see from their peers and get motivated that, I work with this person. Now, everything that you said, like all of these things, I think require a lot of effort and also investment of time. Like you have to create those opportunities within the day-to-day work in order to have people find time in order to do all of these things yourself as well, especially also the people who are working on honing their skills. Now, in these circumstances, when you're trying to create these kind of opportunities for people, do you take any kind of risk balancing with the project needs? Because there's something that like this is going to be a long-term investment on development, which is going to be fruitful overall, but it's not surface level. It's not immediately impacting the delivery time and whatever people are working on. So and I'm not asking just for you, like should a lead take any sort of risk in order to focus on the development goal and maybe affect the project delivery dates a bit?
I think it's a give and take for everyone there also, because like sometimes if you expect someone to come in and work on your live game that's, let's say it's a super successful live game, first of all, they're going to be very hungry to get into it, like all the things that I can learn from this project, so that's already something that you don't really have to do so much about, because people will be happy by just being there and working with the people. Eventually those people are going to get tired of doing the same thing over and over again, because you do have a certain type of release schedule, you do have the same type of events, you do have the same type of content that you release. That's how it is. So by keeping it varied for people also to be able to learn other things in the meanwhile, which doesn't really cost that much, I think it's a given to be able to break up a day, because you cannot always take for granted that people will be efficient.
True.
And I think it's by showing support also, like, because as I tell everyone, it's like you will have your ups, you will have your downs, and you will have everything in between. And by them feeling, just that I can come to work and I can have my ups and I can have my downs, I can be efficient, I can be not efficient, just as long as, of course, that they are doing an overall good job, both as an artist and but also as a person, I think that they will mostly come in more motivated than, not feeling listened to. I'm still stuck with all these tasks. If they are, the company's already losing efficiency.
Totally. Yeah. And also, I mean, you can kind of like survive these situations where you're not affecting the project need much, but still following some method. Like, for example, putting a star artist with a developing artist together on something. So naturally, you're ensuring that the work will get done because the star artist is also on it. They will take care of get stuff done with the quality and whatever. But the developing artist got the introduction to see how this person is doing this work and supporting that person. So these are the things which also I believe like they can really help keep in check with the production schedule, but at the same time like help people develop. And then also you need to keep a bit of watch, isn't it? Like you have to know when you have to pull back, you have to go back to your original plan, but you have to create these smaller opportunities where you're testing things, letting people do something new that they have never done for the first time, but they have to start trying those things out and support them. Exactly what you said. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, in a bigger team or a bigger studio, I think it's always beneficial to have people from all different types of experiences, because that also, it helps everyone, kind of. I mean, if you as a senior that are the star artist, let's say it's a fantastic visual development artist, and I mean, even by working with a junior 3D artist or a junior 2D artist or someone that wants to be a VisDev artist, there's so much in terms of learning that the star artists can also learn by teaching others, right? So teaching is a very powerful thing. Sharing knowledge is a very, very powerful thing. And I think that, yeah, just having people involved in decisions also, I think that's a very important thing, even when it comes to art direction. I mean, you know how it is in the beginning of a project, that's where art direction is the heaviest. And that's when you have to really explore, you have to do various types of marketability testing. And so this kind of a very bunched in time where you are probably working closest with the star artist to develop the vision for what it's going to be, right? But then you have to kind of stick true to that and communicate that down, and like, here's how we found the style, here's how you can help find even further redefine the style, and so on. So it's all, in the end, it's all a team effort.
Mm-hmm. And since you brought up the topic about art direction, and that connects a lot with feedback, giving feedback to people's visual and telling what's working, what's in style, what's not working. Do these things directly or indirectly contribute to the overall talent development of people? Like the kind of review culture you may have at your team, the way the feedback gets shared between the people. Like, do you let the other people also from your team say thoughts about everyone's work?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's usually how I run things, is that, we all give feedback to each other. They give feedback to the vision, to the art direction, because in the end, it's not me art directing, it's us art directing. That's how I try to see it. I'm art directing with all of these people, and we need to take all of our knowledge together to be able to make the best product we can without pitting ourselves into a corner where we set the bar way too high and then we have too little people to actually execute on the plan. So it also has to be very realistic, like which people do I have at my disposal in this strike team of artists that are going to create this vision, right? So if you have 5 2D artists and 2 3D artists, well, maybe you shouldn't do a full 3D game, maybe you should do something more like a 2.5D or maybe just completely 2D, but use 3D elements in a different way. So that also defines the art direction in a big way. And then because then you're efficient, right? And then also everyone will have good input because that's what they're good at. So I absolutely have open groups where we put all the stuff in a folder and we just go through them, having a good time, commending people for their work, and also like giving that feedback, like how much do I have to nitpick? Is this already good enough? So there's a lot of different questions, and also that when I'm satisfied with something that I think for now is good enough, maybe we can iterate on it later. And that's what I say, okay, this is at the quality level we need it to be right now. Let's leave it. Let's go to the next thing, right? And then when you work with a team closely like that and you have a very open communication, the team will start to understand, okay, what are we actually going for? Like, what's the target of all of these things? When do I know that a concept is finished for this purpose? Because every project is different also. So I guess you just have to be, as I said earlier, being very open to changing what your perception of how a project should be executed, because it all depends in the end on what resources do you have.
Yeah. I do that too. In fact, it not just helps on, like, if you're letting people in your team express about and give feedback about the work which is being, it's a very healthy culture. It's a very positive culture where everyone feels that they are appreciated and their thoughts are valued, even though like you could still establish a culture where you can say that, okay, everyone is allowed, but it can't be everyone's decision. So I will make the final call, or whoever is the dedicated art lead on this will make the final call. But still, it's a better way where you're letting everyone even think about the work which has been created and think about what could be improved, what could be better, what could be this and that. So they are automatically developing here as they say. There's feedback and they grow. Yeah. And one of the thing which I subconsciously or maybe never knew that it existed as a concept, but I applied on my work when I deal with the team. And then I heard a podcast lately from Huberman Lab, and that was about the growth mindset. I don't know if you have heard it, but it talks about two kind of feedback, like effort-based feedback and identity-based feedback. And basically, identity feedback, like let's say we have to apply on our industry. Identity feedback is about giving and saying to anyone in your team that, wow, you are an amazing character artist, or you are a natural animator, or whatever. And this is very specific to an individual identity where you are crediting them for what they are. And what the podcast basically tries to, and this whole concept tries to tell you, is that identity feedback is generally not helpful for people's own growth. What you should rather do is more appreciate their effort. So you should say, wow, you really put in a lot of effort in order to make this character lively and feel like it has emotion. So this is where they feel that they did something, they put something, they did some effort. So efforts are, like, obviously, as we know what an effort means, effort can be credited more as compared to an individual identity. And this is where the team feels a bit more motivated, not just bit, but heavily motivated in order to continue delivering instead of, yeah, I'm the best character artist in the world. I didn't need to worry about anything. I'm already there. So you basically, like, you stop and there's not like a growth mindset for you.
Totally. I mean, I know that based on personal experiences also. I would rather say that, hey, this character you just did looks amazing, rather than you are an amazing character artist. Because that's like, oh, thank you. And then I appreciate it, but it doesn't really kind of help you. But if you really get, if you get your actual work brought up, or, like here's how it here's how it could come even to the next level, but now it's already up here. So there's different things, right? Usually you don't have the time in a live game project to just do the best that you always can, because there's not enough time for it. And that's when you have to have a good understanding as a team of where's the good enough bar and where's the great enough, So there's always a little bit of a difference there as well. But yeah, in general, just even what type of positivity it is, I usually don't say it to one individual either. I do say it to individuals, but I also say it in the group. Like after we looked at some content that we just created, it's like, awesome effort, great work this week. Like, hey, this looks amazing. And also, like, when you start doing that, other people will follow. And I've also even talked about that openly in ArtSyncs, about encouragement to your peers, showing appreciation and inspiration to everyone that you're working with also. So it's not, if you bake that into your own kind of art culture, that feedback is great, like depending, of course, I've even had feedback courses with them on like how you should give feedback, what you should leave out, when you should give feedback. That's also a very important thing, right? But then if you bake that into your culture, people will take after that, and then people will give feedback probably as you would have given feedback eventually, and then you also loosen up more time, and you kind of make the team work better together as a unit.
Yeah. What about developing people who have a different expertise and their career path might be different than yours? For example, like I specialize in a certain segment of art. I obviously know everything. Same for you, I believe. But let's say you have a very clear visibility of someone who has a very different needs, and their expertise and their career path is different from your own past experiences, what you know the best. How do you support those kind of people?
So for example, I've worked a lot, as I mentioned earlier, hands-on in engine. So I've touched upon the most things within art that has to do, with an engine, even when it comes to the technical side of things. So for me, it has been kind of easy to discuss that with them, because I know also what the effort is, what they actually need to know to be able to execute their job. But then when it comes to the growth within that team, for example, if you're working with a senior technical artist, for example, and tech art is maybe the thing you know least about. First of all, just understanding what does the team think about this person with the ability that they have currently, and also from their own point of view, what are you best at? Because they can also identify, tech artists are so different. Also, you have people that are great at and loves to do shaders. Some likes to do more procedural things. Some like to do it in code. Some like to do it in visual nodes in different softwares. So it's just about understanding what do they do and what do you want from them. Like, how could you see them grow further? And I would say that most of the time, it's about they could also come with a plan of like, here's what I want to learn, here's how I want to grow, here's what I think that my growth could benefit the company, and then usually from almost all of the artists, even though they naturally become better at what they do the more they do it, a lot of it, I would say, comes down to who are you as a colleague also. Like, what do you actually do in terms of, if you want to be a lead tech artist, for example, hey, I would want you to set up these things for the tech artist. And like, can you drive an initiative to do, this? Can you show me that this works? Can you show me that that you create an atmosphere within tech art that people appreciate, and that you work a lot on your communication. And then I usually follow up with people that they are communicating with also. That's also a very important part of the job. It's not just listen to one individual and please that individual. No, they also need to understand what people around them think about their effort. So gathering information for them, and it's like, hey, here's what the team thinks. You're great at this. Here's where fall between the cracks in terms of communication, for example, like we didn't know these things that you were doing. So it's all about just generally finding what's the biggest blocker for them right now, and then just kind of making sure that they understand what they need to work on to, work towards seniority or work towards being a lead. Or in the end, like, do you want to work with people or do you just want to do your stuff?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, but in the end, it comes down to just you have to be a good manager, you have to understand what they do. You have to understand what the effort is and what type of education level they need or education level that they have. So if you don't understand it, it's very hard to guide them in the right direction. So you need to use their own skills and make them tell you what they're good at, and kind of get an understanding of that at the same time that you need to identify what the project needs, but also what everyone else around them thinks. And how they can grow.
Yeah. And like, just by supporting their needs, making their path clear for what they need, and providing whatever you as a manager can do for them, I think that's also enough for them to just be on the track, continue to grow and develop. And obviously, if you have the opportunity, you can also look for mentors for them within the organization. Like, there can be someone who they want to become, and then you can just put them up with this. Like, hey, you always aspire to be a character designer, and in our company, there's like this really good character designer who has a lot of experience and can teach you a lot. So maybe both of you can connect. You can keep showing around your work and get some good tips. So I think that's also very helpful for them. If you're unable to do by yourself, you can put them into the specialist, and the experts can guide them.
Yeah, exactly. But then you also need to really make sure to motivate the specialists and motivate the people, the person that wants to grow, to also, create this conversation. Because if you just try to introduce and, like, hey, can you talk about this? Maybe they do it once or twice, and then they kind of get lost into, doing their own thing. So it's also about having a plan, following up, like, what are you seeing?
Yeah.
What goals are you, as the mentor in this case, what are you setting up for this person so they can actually have something to work towards? And then you kind of check off, because that's also how you can make sure that communication is established, is that you maybe give the star artist then a list of just small things can you come up with that? Maybe you don't even have to create a list. You can ask that person to do it. What are the 3 most important things in your work that, how you do things, your process, that you can share with this person, and then give them a task to kind of follow up on and learn by themselves also.
Yeah, absolutely. The motivation part is very important. And this makes me curious, like, is there any sort of like a lifestyle of yours, like a leadership outlook of you that you present to your team, which makes them constantly inspired? Like, I'm going to give some example. Like, for example, do you show a lot of interest on new technology or new methods or how things are evolving? Is that something that you do, which basically makes people feel that, they have to progress? It's not always a stagnant way of working, appreciating changes, appreciating experiments. What kind of like your own individual identity inspires your team?
So I would say that when it comes, it all comes down to time again, right? So how much time do you actually have? How much time do you have for R&D for a new project? So research and development, right? So how much, like, what tools do we have that we need right now? How have we struggled with these tools in the past to create what we want in an efficient manner? And what is currently out there to, that we can implement in our workflow to make our art more efficient, right? So it's a combination of everything. I think that being innovative and creating, inheriting things from older projects that you were proud of, or that it's like, this really benefited the project, and then you build upon those tools to further expand. But also giving the room for people to explore or even request, what's the most tedious thing right now in the pipeline? When you have been creating this previous project, what was the most pain in the back, So it's then they will just like, oh, I needed to do 18 clicks here to be able to implement this texture in the end. Okay, how can we get that down to 2? And then it's like, do we need a tech artist? Do we need a programmer to be able to do this? But constantly like encourage thinking also, and I've asked even on my tech artist to like, if there's anything that you see out there that could be beneficial or more efficient than what we're using, take inspiration from it, and let's see how we can potentially get it into our pipeline. And why I'm mentioning tech artists, because of course they are mostly working with the pipeline and the way and supporting artists in giving them the right tools that they need, and of course in combination with programmers. So some you need to. It depends on what skill set you have available, really. Also, but I would say I think it's super important to not be stuck in old ways, and making games. It's constantly evolving. I mean, you don't have to keep up with new tools and new ways of working, but it's also creates it makes everything fresh at the same time. Yeah.
And are there any sort of like I understood how you work, but are there any kind of like mathematical tools or set processes on I don't know, whoever experts might have worked on this concept and might have defined some stuff? Like, is there a way that someone can sit with a team and define their skill matrix, plan out how their whole team composition, where the weight is coming in, then having a system to measure the progress? Like it could be defined by, I'm even curious to know how measurement is done, because art is also subjective, as we know. So even measuring an art can be subjective. And then recognizing and rewarding and having a format for this for an entire year. Like, is there any kind of background tool that exists, or do you use them? Something like this?
It's a tricky one, because you said, art is subjective the same way that performance is subjective. And I would just really want to underline performance is subjective. And earlier I mentioned that one manager way fits all. It doesn't exist. And I mean, of course, measuring and it can be done in different ways, right? I would say that the only type of measuring, in a sense, would be how efficient are you in the games project? Like how much content up to this quality can we pump out in 2 weeks? But that also then it comes down to the actual planning of the project. How clear are the guidelines from product? How clear are the guidelines from game design? How clear are they? How far have the coders done the gameplay so you can start implementing the art for it? And so there's so many factors that could affect someone else's performance and motivation. And I don't have a perfect answer. I'm sorry. I wish I did, but it's such a tricky thing, because there are, of course, you can set up goals, and I've set up goals and have followed, like, I don't know exactly remember what it's called, but following the Google principle. It's like, what are your personal goals? What are the project's goals? What are the team's goals? What are the company goals? And how can I make sure that my goals align with everything kind of else? In the end, I would say more like a happy and motivated artist going in day by day will most likely do what you require of them. So the most important thing is not how to track how they are in terms of tracking them on a diagram or a paper. I don't like doing that. I like to be very fluent and very open with them, and of course, take notes. Hey, we should follow up on this. We should follow up on that. Let's talk next time about this. See how you feel in a month. Maybe when they've gotten, a bigger amount of feedback or something, they wanted maybe a 360. So I make sure to follow up with them and then make sure that, how do you feel about this? What have you changed? What has changed in your way of thinking? So it becomes very individual. So, but I don't really have a solid method, especially when I was direct supervisor over 23 people at one point. that would just be tracking half of them would be a full-time job if I had to do it by some type of documentation. So then I would just was seeing, okay, what's the most important thing right now to the individuals and to the projects, and how can I fulfill them? So it kind of came down to that in the end, and by using, I know myself, considering myself being a high performer back in the day, when I had to do something that was like goals and goal setting, I was like, well, so boring. This is so unmotivating for me because I just want to create. So maybe some of them it doesn't even work on, but then you should never try to kind of enforce to make them do something that they're not comfortable with, because in the end you're just working with grown up people, and hopefully that they are hired because of a reason, because they are awesome persons and they're an awesome artist. I don't think it needs to be measured.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. And this is exactly what I feel as well, which is why I just wanted to check with you, because I don't have a toolkit either. And like you said, I've tried those methods. Sometimes there might be from your organization side, there might be like a rollout about a setup, like for example, from Google, you can sit and plan according to this. It never worked for me. It never actually worked. Like I couldn't, and exactly like you said, you either have to focus on that. So I believed in more like a practical approach, like whatever I'm able to think, maybe it might not be right and it could be individualistic, but it allows me to have more freedom of my own ways of working on the development of people. And even if it doesn't fall into a very systematic approach, which someone might have planned about how it works, I think it practically works out, which is basically just ensuring the things that you said, like you are supporting them, you are providing them the right guidance, you are interacting with them, you are accessible for them. The culture in the team is very, very positive. People are sharing their knowledge, people are sharing their stuff. And then making sure that you are regularly recognizing people's work, you are appreciating whenever there are moments, you are crediting people, you are fighting or let's say advocating for people's growth when you really see that someone is a high performer and they deserve to step up into the promotion tier or in whatever way. But like exactly how we started, like the art is so subjective, so can be the growth and development. And growth and development can also be very different for example, for a junior who has just started to learn, like stepped out from the college and have joined you like a very raw talent. The progress and the example that some person can make in one year could be very different from someone who is on a very saturation level, very expert already, and then their differences might not be as drastic. And you can't mean to say that that person is not progressing. So
Exactly.
it's very individual, like personal level you have to think, isn't it?
Oh, totally. I mean, I have a lot of friends out there in the industry where their art managers maybe have just like, okay, now we are gonna do all of these goal setting, and that took like weeks of work for them to also do. Like, and they could not have any personal goals that was tied with art. It had to do with something very subjective of how they are as a person and how they. And people were so demotivated. They were almost angry of like, why am I being forced to do this? I just want to do my awesome art, and I want to go home and I want to play some games. Like, and I've never heard that would be the same with me. And also like getting feedback on something because it's not good enough up to the standard of someone that it's very manager heavy, maybe that has gone to manager educations for whatever, it has to be documented. Art doesn't work that way. It has to be creative. It has to be passion. And you create both of those things within a team by being real, by understanding what actually is important, and not forcing paperwork down their throats, because that's why they're in this industry, to do all of these kind of follow-up things or personal goal settings, because as we talked about earlier, most people don't even know, like I don't know what's my next step, like how maybe it's, I'm not saying it's not good to think about, maybe it's great to ask yourself these questions, But if they don't want to, it should be like, okay, cool, no worries, that's how I think it should be treated.
Yeah, absolutely. So, final closing words from you. I mean, we spoke a lot at extent about everything, but if you have to just summarize this into a few keywords for someone who is becoming an athlete for the first time, and they're responsible to help their team grow, like what would be your few keywords to tell them?
Learn who you're working with, first of all. And what are they trying to achieve? What is the project trying to achieve? What's the game lead's vision for this project? How does that align with, how's the teamwork currently in the team? You need to do a lot of observation in the beginning. Maybe wait with your own personal opinions in the beginning. Just be a sponge, absorb what's there, and then you present it in a way of like, hey, here's my personal impressions of what's going on. Like, feel free to agree or not agree, but bam, 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 here's what I see. Here's where I think we can be a little bit more efficient. Here's maybe a part of the process that we could rework. Maybe we should cut down by looking at your schedule, all these meetings that you have. So it's all about how can you optimize their way of working. And people that are high performers, they want freedom, but they also want good input that makes a lot of value, brings a lot of value to what they currently are doing. So it's a balance between good feedback at the right time, analyzing the whole situation, analyzing the team dynamics, and just do what you think is best for the team and for the individuals in regards to process and goals at the same time.
Yeah. And I would like to add some of my thoughts on this, on whatever you already said, but a few more things, like is to have a lot of patience overall. This is something which is very important, because sometimes, like when you're becoming a new leader, you are very impatient and you judge too early. And you also tend to get a bit biased instantly. So having a bit amount of patience overall helps a lot. Also giving chance to raw talent. And one of the most important thing which you said in one of the previous answer was to support them. I think support is more important than inspiring them, because maybe like we spoke, that their career path might be different. They have different heroes. Their specialization might be different, but inspiration is not the key here. It's about support. And that sometimes is better than inspiring them.
Oh, totally. And just one last thing. It's a different thing becoming promoted within a studio to a lead position, because then you already know some people. And as a matter of fact, some people might not even like that you got promoted before them. So it's all of these kind of different things that you have to balance at the same time as well. So that's where patience really kicks in. It's when you get promoted within a company and all of a sudden you're going to lead maybe a group of people that you weren't just colleagues with in the past. So you really need to take it slow there. And coming in as a new lead in a project, patience. Obviously say something. If something is clearly off, you have to obviously say it out loud. Yeah, this is not efficient. This is not working. We need to find new ways to work around this, or but that's after you've done the gathering of the information. So just keep all of these different things in mind and you'll be fine.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Misha, for this amazing talk. And we really learned a lot by talking to you today. And it was very interesting to see your approach, and also very, very fun to see a lot of parallels in my approach, your approach. So thank you so much once again. And I'm, of course, going to link you on the description. So if someone wants to connect with you, they can connect. Maybe they might reach out to you if they have some questions. And as much as I know Misha as a person, he's always very willing to help people. So he will definitely answer. And just to conclude, if you really like this podcast overall, please subscribe and comment and share feedback and share this with your network, and also give us ratings. So that will be really helpful for us. And also, if you have any certain topic in mind about what the next episode should be like, please share them over the email over with me, and I will make sure that they are included in the next lineup. Thank you so much and have a great day. Thank you so much, Misha.
Thanks for having me.